All right, back into it. Okay. Sorry, Tammy, we're starting you off in the middle of this. So we are talking about the Alan Aragon Research review article that says claiming that protein intake at 1.6 grams per kg is the limit of effectiveness, ignores context and evidence. The general discussion points are: number one, it's well established and widely accepted that the recommended daily allowance of 0.8 grams per kg of protein is insufficient or suboptimal for large segments of the general population. And most recently, or more recently, it's been more accepted that double that, so 1.6 grams per kg is beneficial and possibly optimal or maximal for improving clinical and athletic goals, including gains in muscle size and strength. For instance, in a recent study by Morton et al. From 2018 with 49 individuals, they concluded that it may be prudent to recommend up to 2.2 grams per kg, so about 1 gram per pound, to those seeking to maximize resistance training induced gains in fat-free mass. So even higher than that. And as we know, there are numerous other studies, for example, by Dr. Antonio, I believe, where it was like even up to like 4 grams per kg over the duration of like, it's like half a year to 2 years. I don't remember exactly, like several other long-term studies. But I think the main thing that they have, or that the writer of this article was talking about, is that, hey, we need to look more closely at training status, at their calorie status, and at age. So that was like my 3 takeaways. Because yeah, it seems that or nowadays with more novel and controversial evidence, it seems that protein intakes beyond double the recommended daily allowance of 1.6 kg and more can actually benefit certain athletic populations to push the envelope of body composition. Many in the space have settled firmly into the belief that 1.6 grams per kg is the cutoff point. However, the International Society of Sports Nutrition and others have set their upper recommendation actually at 2 grams per kg. And then there was a very recent study by Helms et al. That examined protein needs of lean resistance trained subjects in a hypocaloric, is what that's supposed to mean, conditions, and found that intakes ranging from 2.1 to 3.2 grams per kg of fat-free mass were actually required to maximize muscle preservation in a deficit. So again, it seems like training status. So if we're completely new to training, we can get away with a lot less. Then also your calories, if you're in a calorie surplus, that means you have more carbs, which tend to spare the protein anyway. So you can get away with a lower protein in that case. But then also age overall, if you're younger, if you're in your 20s or even your teens, you can get away with very minimal protein most likely. So his conclusion was that, as shown across multiple lines of research, the evidence for the benefits of protein intakes substantially beyond the presumed limit of 1.6 kg is abundant. The main additional benefits seem to be that we have less desire to eat, and that was actually something else that Bill Campbell spoke about on Monday in the podcast as well, that in his eyes, consuming more protein is really not just so much about maintaining muscle mass, but much more about satiation. So less desire to eat, more preservation of muscle mass in a deficit, which could also benefit in a clinical setting. So even with completely non-active individuals and not just athlete populations. I did put that one in there because I always think it's interesting in terms of body fat. Like if we have more body fat, we might also be able to get in a calorie deficit to get away with, like, if we're new to resistance training, with a little bit less protein or so. But yeah, one cool thing, just again, also to mention one more thing from the Bill Campbell interview, was really that he was saying in more and more studies, we see that even if you're not exercising and you're increasing protein, people see body composition changes. I find that super interesting. But yeah, anything from your guys' side to add, that, or anything that was new, that was interesting about this article? Anybody? No. No thoughts. I mean, like, this is completely the opposite of that previous Menno Henselmans article. So I mean, I know that most of us err on the side of caution, or are on the higher side, in the sense of at least probably 1 gram per pound of body weight. But yeah, I'd love to hear where everyone's protein is at the moment, like just roughly speaking.
Well, I'll say that I'm glad for this review, because it just kind of firms the way that I approach protein. And part of that is I like to be on the higher side, because we don't always know what the quality of the protein is. So if we're not able to even just digest all the amount that we require, so that's kind of my take on one of the reasons to have more higher protein intake. And I know I've said this before, but as we age, we just require a lot more of those amino acids. So this is a good way to kind of support the methods that I follow.
So your protein is set at 1 gram per pound, or roughly?
It would be more. And the reason I struggle to I rarely just stick with my body weight. It's always over. But one of the reasons is having a whey protein shake post workout, that even if I don't even take the full or consume the full amount, it's still it sets my day. It's great. It still kind of sets me over that protein threshold. So I'm up, I would say I'm about 1.2 grams per pound of body weight generally.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What about some of the others? Mike, where's your protein at the moment?
It's probably similar, to be fair. So in working in kilos, it's probably 2 to 2.3 per
Okay.
grams per kilo.
Yeah.
So it's probably around there. But again, kind of it's quite nice. It's such a satiating macro. Like I enjoy it for the sake of enjoying it. So yeah, so similar to Laura, it's kind of quite nice that this feeds that bias in a way.
Sure does. That's true. Well, same for me. I have a hard time staying, and I mean, we've spoken about this. I have a hard time staying at like one gram, and I really think it's more than anything a satiation. And I just like foods that are high in protein. Like, I thoroughly enjoy them. So yeah. But yeah, lastly, I just included a little abstract, or whatever, is conclusion of that last study that they mentioned, the really new study by Eric Helms that they just released. Just let me put that to the side. I can't actually see anything. So it's titled "A Systematic Review of Dietary Protein During a Caloric Restriction in Resistance Trained Lean Athletes, a Case for Higher Intake." I'm going to read the whole thing since it's short anyway. So the abstract is: caloric restriction occurs when athletes attempt to reduce body fat or make weight. There is evidence that protein needs increase when athletes restrict calories or have low body fat. The purpose of that study was to evaluate the effects of dietary protein on body composition in energy-restricted resistance-trained athletes, to provide protein recommendations for these athletes. So for that, they searched databases from 2013 onwards, using the terms protein intake or diet or weight or train or restrict energy, etc. And they included 6 studies with athletes over 18 years, at least 6 months of resistance training experience, which still one might argue is not necessarily experience, but still. And they had lower body fat levels of less than 23%. So actually quite, not necessarily super lean. And females of less than 35%. And the protein intake, fat-free mass, and body fat had to be reported. The results were that body fat percentage decreased in all study groups, and fat-free mass decreased as well in 9 of the 13 studies. Oh, I thought it was 6 studies. I don't know. Six groups gained and did not lose or lost non-significant amounts of fat-free mass. 5 out of these 6 groups were among the highest in body fat, lowest in caloric restriction, or underwent novel resistance training stimuli. However, the one group that was not high in body fat that underwent substantial caloric restriction without novel training stimuli consumed the highest protein intake out of all of the groups in this review, so 2.5 to 2.6 grams per kg. So they concluded that protein needs for energy restricted resistance trained athletes are likely 2.3 to 3.1 grams per kg of fat-free mass, mind you, not of total body mass, scaled upwards with severity of caloric restriction and leanness. Just thought that was interesting. But yeah, any thoughts on this last new paper? No?
I think one thing that I've heard Eric Helms talk about that paper in some of the podcasts is that people sometimes mistake it for being an actual study, but it's obviously dependent on, it's a systematic review, so it's dependent on the research that's already been carried out. And
Right.
it's only on 6 papers and obviously limited by the population that they studied. So I think sometimes people take those figures for gospel when
Yeah.
actually it's probably, there's still some uncertainty with those numbers.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well then, I hope you guys thought about your homework.
Just
Which
gonna say as well,
was talking
the
about.
other thing,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I was just going to say the other thing he's basically was saying that there's so it's scaled, right? So the amount of protein needed to maintain and preserve fat-free mass scaled with their the hypocaloric conditions, right?
Yes.
So at the lower end it was like 2.1, and then at the top end it was 3.2. And like applying what Mike's just said and from what Helm said as well, like I think that just gives you more practical tools, doesn't it? To say like, actually, if you're in the back end of a deficit and you're taking it up and up and up and up, that's where you probably want to then start taking up the protein.
Right.
So I know a lot of people will be like, oh, okay, so we'll set your goal at, I don't know, 1.6, and then they keep it there. It's static.
That's
I guess that's the.
Yeah, so like in your example, since you're like at the tail end of a pretty severe cut, have you guys increased your protein?
Yeah, well, kind of, but not like intentionally. If that makes
What do you
sense.
mean?
Try and like it wasn't so it's been set at 200 pretty much throughout, but then of course it's so the relative protein has gone up, but the absolute has gone down because my
Oh,
calories have gone down, if that makes sense. So
gotcha. Yes.
and I'm just the same as you. Like I also really just all the foods and the way I like to eat is high in protein. So
Right. Yeah. Nice.
it's unintentionally stayed higher relatively.
Well, how many more weeks do you have? Because I think you said you have your first show this month, right?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks on Sunday.
Oh, wow. Wow. So 10 days roughly.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
excited for you. Okay, cool. We'll be thinking of you on that day.
Thank you very much.
Do you have to travel anywhere or is it local?
You don't have to travel very far. It's like an hour and a half, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So,
yeah.
Well, excited to hear about it.
I've got to travel the day before to get 2 coats of spray tan because I'm so pale.
Oh, funny. Well, who would like to start with their training intensification technique?
I'll go ahead and start. I'm kind of cheating because I'm talking about what I talked about last week. And it's very focused on my own life experience at the moment. So, working with strengthening around the knee area with my injury. And I don't have the opportunity for a lot of range of motion because I can't go into a deep squat position. I can't go into deep bends, and I have to be careful with not twisting or anything like that. So range of motion is off the table. Lifting heavier weights puts a lot more compression on that area. And it feels there's some weakness on that side. So going up and up and up in weight isn't necessarily an option. So I have to play with things like adding additional reps. So I'm backing off on the weight, and I'm also, my favorite thing is to slow down the tempo. So tempo training is like my thing right now. So doing similar movements to what I would normally do within the range of motion and with the weight load that I'm able to manage, but just slowing that way down, especially on the eccentric portion of things, and really getting that time under tension and using that for the intensification factor, I guess, is just spending more time there. I did read a little bit about the blood flow restricted training that we talked about last week, and I am feeling like that could potentially be beneficial in maybe a clinical setting. So like working with my PT, whenever that happens next, who knows what's happening. But I don't feel like I can do that correctly, especially having never tried that before, because it sounds like there's some degree of accuracy in terms of the amount of pressure that you're putting, the location that you're putting the straps, and all of that feels very overwhelming to me. So I don't think that's something that I can do on my own, but I do see that there's potential benefit there in the future, with some assistance. So really leaning into the tempo training and just doing what I can by slowing things down. And I have an appointment for my doctor, but it's 2 months away. So I'm just, things take forever to move in medicine. So I am just focusing on that and just keeping my head running the mile that I'm in, so to speak, but not running at all.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I think tempo training is awesome. It can be so beneficial in so many aspects. I mean, I one of the hardest strength trainings I've ever done that was like right out of CrossFit was with a lot of tempo work. So like 4 seconds down, 5 seconds holding the squat at the bottom, 3 seconds up, or no, actually the up was almost always explosive, but yeah, so hard. And I think the only difficulty I have with tempo work is that, I mean, one day your 3 seconds is going to be different than another day 3 seconds sometimes. And so like choosing the right weight or like recording progress with tempo work, I sometimes find hard because you can like cheat yourself into progress easily if you're like 1, 2, 3 the first week, and then the second week 1, 2, 3 like it's like, oh yeah, I managed to do the same thing but at a different weight. But no, I think for your circumstances that's great. And I mean, with the blood flow restriction work, I think once you've maybe gone through it with someone once, you might also see like, oh, okay, it's actually quite easy. It doesn't cause any extra pain. On the contrary, it actually feels good. And the pump that I feel afterwards is all, is a good thing. And then it could be something. But for now, I think you're doing exactly the right thing. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Right. Who's next?
I'll go next. So I guess I do, in my training at the moment, I probably do 3 types of what you'd call intensity techniques. So I probably do my reps, my match sets, which are all basically rest pause type techniques. And then I do a couple of giant sets. So that's basically where you set a rep target and you get there basically. So for example, I'll do cable bicep curls and I'll say, right, I have to get 20 reps with this weight. And then I might go for the first set, I might get like say 15, and then I'll just do a rest pause set and then do like 3 and then 2. And then the next set might be like 10. Then I want to try, but I have to get to 20 eventually at some point.
I've never heard of this type of giant set. I've always thought giant set is like you have superset, then you have triset, and then a giant set is anything with like 4 exercises or more. But that's interesting. Could you explain for those that don't know what the Mayo set is, or the other one that you mentioned?
Yeah, so you've got two. They were kind of formulated by a guy called his name's just gone out of my head. That's helpful. Sorry, come back to that. But yeah, so you've got myo reps. So this is basically where you do one set as a normal set, so a straight set, but they call it an activation set. And then you basically do rest pause sets after that. Now, I typically do 3, but the guy who created it says you could do anywhere from 2 to 10, which is probably a bit excessive, but I'll do 3. So basically you do your first set, however many you get, then you take 3 to 5 slow, deep breaths, then you do another set for as many as you could do, and then you'd repeat that 3 times essentially.
Yeah.
So those are myo reps. And then you've got myo match sets. So this is slightly different. So you do one set as a normal straight set, but then every single set after that has to match the reps for that first set. Okay.
With the same
So
weight,
say, for
or you're
example,
allowed to drop the weight?
no, same weight. So say for example, you were doing bench press and you were doing it with say 50 kilos and you got, let's just say 15 reps for the first set. And then say on the second set, you got 10, right? You rack the weight, take 3 to 5 slow deep breaths, and then maybe you get 3, right? Rack it, 3 to 5 deep breaths, rack it until you get 15 as your original set, and then go from there. So
Oh,
pretty, yeah, they're intense, literally.
sounds very difficult, but I can imagine that it because you push close to failure or to failure on numerous times during that, by the sounds of it. So
But you can obviously do it to match your target intensity for the week. So if you were following, like say, reps in reserve, and you had a reps in reserve target that week for say 3, you do exactly the same thing, but you just take those sets to a 3 RAR. So it doesn't have to be to failure, it can be to the target
Gotcha.
RAR for the week.
Okay, gotcha. Makes sense. Awesome.
Oh,
Thank you
and
for
the
sharing.
only other thing that I do sometimes is down sets. So that's slightly different from a drop set. So a drop set is when you immediately drop the weight, take no rest and go. Whereas a down set is where you take your normal amount of rest, but you've dropped the weight by 10 to 20%.
Okay, cool. Nice. Awesome. Who's next?
I guess I will go. I haven't really, I was looking at like cluster sets and those sort of things, kind of keeping it more basic, but different at the same time. So I'll look into that. But it's similar to Allison. I've been trying to, personally, I'm focusing more on tempo, but however, like slowing it down and then explosive. Just to kind of switch it up and decrease the amount of load, specifically on my back and stuff. I feel like my strength has gone down. However, it's not terrible. So that's kind of like basics of what I was looking into.
Oh, could you explain what a cluster set is for those that don't know?
No, I cannot.
Okay. Sorry.
No, I was gonna look into it. No, I have a basic idea, but I don't want to explain it and be wrong
Okay, no,
just
that's absolutely fine. Anyone else wants to chip in? I think I roughly know what it is, but
yeah, probably Mike, maybe not.
I can't actually remember. I listened to it on the Mass podcast, but I can't actually remember exactly what the cluster sets are. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure either.
right, we'll do Laura, you do some homework on that and let us know next time.
Yeah, I did. Like I've known about it. I knew about it years ago, but now I can't seem to grab it out of my head, and then I haven't taken the time to dive into it. So
Unless I'm mistaken, I believe, do you just break down your normal set into small chunks of reps and then you take a specific rest between those chunks of reps?
Right. So if you're meant to do 12 reps, you do 2 5 seconds, 2 5 seconds, 2 5 seconds, 2 5 seconds. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Cool, thank you.
No worries.
Well, you might as well go next if you have another one.
I mean, my training's super unexciting. What do? I don't think I do anything special, to be honest. Everything stays the same. I just train Ariat and
Do you do any drop
same
sets or anything like that, or no?
no,
Force negative,
nothing exciting anymore.
or any forced reps or anything? No. Okay.
Haven't done them for a long, long time. Since I started with these guys, Revive Stronger, they just for some reason they like to just put you through horrendous sets, so you don't want to do anything else. No, the only thing I really do is superset. That's all I do.
Okay. But you
that's
have done forced reps in the past?
Oh yeah, I played with loads of stuff in the past. Yeah. I'm not entirely convinced a lot of these methods actually improve things. I think it's more just enjoyment.
Yeah.
I'm certainly I don't know anything about the literature, so
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of like forced reps at all, or like when other people assist. It just, to me, it doesn't make, I mean, like maybe the last rep or so every now and then, but just generally speaking, doing that on a regular basis, I don't see the point of that. But yeah.
no. I mean, I used to love it. You know, if you get someone to really like, just push you to that past the point of failure, it used to be fun. But I that was when I used to train like you know, proper bro 12 years ago. And we used to do it every week. So probably wasn't useful.
All right. Joyce, what about your homework?
Well, I just do, you know, I follow Lisa's program. I have been for years. So basically I'm doing supersets is pretty much what mine is. But I don't know that I mean, I don't know that I really, what I've mostly focused on is my form, is trying to get that right. Because if I don't, I feel like something's going to hurt. Because I'm always cautious of my back and neck. So, but anyway, I mean, it's not anything I guess I really do a lot of, other than trying to focus on that. I try to lift more whenever I feel like I can go heavier. Like I did that this week. I was actually going to lower my reps because of my back bothering me, but actually I've been feeling pretty good, so I took a chance and went higher on my reps this last week. But everything seems to be going pretty good with that. I mean, you know, I don't think about it really. I just go out there and do it. But
During your time in CrossFit, did you guys use any intensification techniques, like, or anything other interesting, like with chains, or, you know, with like sometimes with bands, you see people that do specific things like yeah, bench press or barbell back squats with chains or anything like that?
no, we never did. No, you know, if anybody used a chain, it might have been the coaches, but they never did have us doing any of that. I think they were always cautious of us, you know, doing things like that. They didn't want us to get hurt or, you know, or whatever, but they just kind of pretty much stuck to the basics, I guess. And
if anybody has tried chains, it's a super interesting and weird kind of feeling, because, well, you add the balance aspect to it, because it's a little bit more like, yeah, you know, wiggly, and also because how do I describe it? The weight increases as you, like, it, of course, you know, you're used to the weight feeling light, like for instance with a squat, weight feeling lighter when you go down, and then you have to push harder when you go up, but the chains kind of make that the opposite way around. Am I explaining this correctly? Not really.
It gets heavier as you get towards the top.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it feels weird because you add more weight as you go up, so to speak. So it's an interesting feeling. I do recommend every now and then giving a different sort of technique a go, just because it's, or like a different toy a go, if you if you ever have the chance, just because it's fun to play around with certain things. But yeah, I know, Melissa, you're not training at the moment, but nonetheless, in the past, well, you are with your physiotherapist, but in the past
Okay.
or just generally, do you have any, and I know you have a sore throat, but if you can talk, do you
I'm
have
gonna
any?
try to see how much I can actually talk. Can you actually hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I started training this week, and the physio actually, that's not me coughing, that's Ben. Nice family. So I'll try to focus. So what we did was I did pyramid sets now because I am overly excited that I get to train again. So at the beginning, I chose a very, very heavy weight and say, no, I got this. I can do this. And I actually can do it. But then myself comes like, okay, what if this band that is not stitched to me just moves? So I decreased the weight for the second set. And then for the third set, because I was actually tired from the previous two sets, I decreased it even further.
Yeah,
So
good.
I did pyramid sets. At
Mhm.
the end, I noticed that because I was afraid, I did pyramid sets. So I was allowed to train in a proper gym with machines, not with free weights, but it's a normal gym. And the thing is that I got one of the girls that didn't have a lot of expertise
Mm.
in my type of training. Mind you, I mean, she's used to working with people that has just one leg, or with very old people, or with some problem or disability. So a person that was like, no, I just had a surgery and just need to train carefully. She was like, well, then what do you need to rehabilitate? Nothing specifically. Then she was just like, yeah, well, then choose whatever you want to do.
It's
So
a bit of a pity that they didn't assign you to like a pelvic floor specialist or something like that.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, there
yeah.
are physiotherapists that specialize in that.
But no, they didn't. So they have a lot of very, very old people that is going with crunches is the right word for
Crutches?
muletas, crunches,
Mhm.
or on wheelchairs, or that lack one arm or one leg, or they are rehabilitating from after some surgery that is like more obvious for them. So for that, they have a lot of expertise and they have a lot of adaptations. But for me, it was like, what is your injury? No, I don't have an injury. I had a surgery. I had this surgery. Well, what did they tell you? That I shouldn't exercise for 4 to 6 weeks and then I should go back slowly. Okay, then put as much weight as you want, and then if you feel something weird, just decrease it.
Well, but there you go. You got to train. I mean, that's something.
I got to train has been a little bit too much because it was 3 days in a row because that's how the program is. So it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it is for 1 hour, and you have the whole day something. That's something that when I have a bit more of a voice, I would like to tell you guys about it, because the program is designed in a very nice way. It's very interdisciplinary. So when you think in a program to help a population to just improve quality of life and health, this is the way I would design it. I don't know if it works, but I mean, I got seen by a doctor, by a nurse, by a physiotherapy, by an ergotherapist. We had some therapies about like relaxation and yoga-like movement, but we also had a gym with physiotherapists that helps you to design the program. So the program, I think, is well designed.
Good.
And I had 3 days with that, very intense, from 8:30 a.m. until 5 p.m., something every hour. And now I have to train 2 days a week in their gym. And I have 1 hour to train in the gym and 1 hour of therapy of like relaxation or yoga like stuff for 12 weeks. And then I have a refresher and then it's done. But I even had a nutrition seminar for 1 hour. It was difficult to shut up, but
That's awesome. I actually during my university studies, I worked in a center like this, in a rehabilitation center for yeah, a few weeks. It was interesting. Unfortunately, most of the people like permanently working there, they said that, you know, people do most people, like 95% of the people that go there, they will do that for that duration and then nothing after that, and they come back after 2 years because they have another lumbar, whatever, like herniated disc, or they do the same things again. So yeah,
That
but
is sad because
well designed.
I don't see other way. If you ask me how would you do it, that's the way I would, but it still doesn't work.
Yeah.
They even get you free of your job. So these days are not holidays. These days are paid. Your food is paid. Your transport is paid. They pay you to go
Yeah, it's
and then
awesome.
feed you, and they give you a bottle of water, and they treat you really well.
Yeah.
And if people doesn't continue, I know what else they can do.
Yeah, it's quite sad, but yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, Julia, what about you? Any intensification techniques that you have used in the past with you? You've had some personal trainers and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, for example, I'm using your training as well, so you know what I'm training. So yeah, I just find it always interesting that, or sometimes I would like to understand why certain exercises, why no, how you say, sometimes, or I find it interesting to know some exercises are just to fatigue a muscle, and then to hit another muscle. So sometimes I think I want to jump over an exercise because it's easier, because it's occupied, and then you jump on the other. I don't know how to explain it.
No, I think I know what you mean. If I'm understanding you correctly, you skip one exercise sometimes because a machine is occupied. But if you do that, you notice you might actually have much more strength because the muscle isn't so fatigued from the prior exercise, whereas the logic behind it was actually to fatigue that particular muscle. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So for example, in one of the lower training days you gave me, it's for the how you say for the booties, and so if I do certain exercises or in a different way, then I'm less I have less muscle pain than if I do it the other way. So it's
Yeah.
quite interesting. I did it like 2 times this way and 2 times the other way, and I was much sore when I did it the right way.
That's interesting. Yeah. No, I mean,
So
yeah.
yeah, that was my learning, and it remembered me that I heard many podcasts about getting the fatigue, so that this muscle is not actually being used by that exercise, and then another one has to help out, and that's the muscle you want to hit. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really a good point. Especially also, I mean, of course, that's very targeted for hypertrophy, right? Like if people train for strength, then that's probably particularly not how you want a training program to be set up, so that the, you know, if you're using doing a certain exercise, that you're as fresh as possible.
Yeah, and another takeaway was you did a podcast about insulin resistancy, and I found it super interesting. And the guy, he was talking about fats or unsaturated fats, which can actually also how you say, pump up the blood sugar level. And it's kind of interesting because I thought like coconut, for example, coconut oil in combination with carbs can actually be really bad for people which have problem with insulin resistancy. And it reminds, or it makes sense after I listened to that, because when I use, or there are some really delicious coconut chips, which are not actually sweet, but I feel really, they are a little bit sweetened with agave syrup, and if I eat them, I feel like super awkward afterwards. And now I just find it really interesting because maybe it also makes sense for people who have an insulin resistance, telling them stuff about that, because it might be that they cook a lot of curries or whatever with coconut milk or whatever, and eat that with rice. And yeah, maybe that could be one of the reasons why the blood sugar level is super high.
Thank you for the feedback. That's good to know that you enjoyed the podcast with Calvin. And yeah, he's so knowledgeable, even though he's like 18
He's
years
super
old.
young.
He's
This
18, like literally.
is super freaky. I just thought, oh, is he's American? Maybe it's all bullshit what he's talking about, but he knew too
No.
much about thinking about what he talked to.
He's like a super nerd, but in a really good way. So yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I've used a couple of other intensification techniques. So like, for example, some of the rest pause sets that or training methods that Mike was talking about also. One of the hardest things one of my training programs ever has had me do was to do 10 squats. You rest 30 seconds, 10 squats, rest 30 seconds, 10 squats for 5 sets. And then you rest like 2.5 minutes or even 3, or I don't know, it was long rest, maybe even 5. And then you do that again for 3 times. I thought I would die. Like it was so hard. It was because I mean, like you can literally, in my case, I think I did it at like maybe 40% of my 1 rep max, and still you are so sore. I mean, that's similar to German volume training overall, but at least with German volume training, you do 10 reps, you rest 2 minutes, and then you do 10. But after those 30 seconds, you have barely time to rack it, to take like a few breaths, and you go again. Whoa. So really, not a lot of fun in the moment, and afterwards your legs are definitely destroyed. So that's one of the hardest intensification techniques. I had another one in mind, but now I'm failing to think of it also. But yeah, anyway, if anyone ever encounters a program like that, have fun with it. I'm not quite that cruel, so I haven't put it into any of my programs yet. But yeah.
That kind of sounds in some ways like a weird amalgamation between cluster sets and
Yes.
and German volume training. But so I quickly read up on cluster sets. So it's basic cluster sets are basically, they're primarily used for strength to maintain power output over a given rep range. So you can maintain a higher quality of performance with a given weight. So what you'd typically do is you'd pick, say, 10 repetitions, but then you'd break it down into, say, 2 reps. So you'd do 2 reps, rest for 20 seconds, 2 reps again until you've maybe hit your total of 10 repetitions, and then you take a longer rest period. So the theories behind that is that you can maintain faster velocity with 2 reps, so you can maintain a higher quality output with higher percentages of your 1 rep max or something of that nature.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I remember using that sort of approach with a lot of Olympic lifting, where of course, velocity is the main thing for snatches and clean and jerks and stuff. So yeah, it was often like, hey, do 10 reps, but do 2 and then take a couple of breaths and then do 2 and so on. So that makes sense. Thanks for reading up on that. Awesome. Cool. Any last thoughts? Oh yes, Tom.
Reminded me of Smolov.
Of what?
I don't know
Sorry.
if you've come across Smolov. Smolov? Has anyone come across Smolov program?
Not a program. I thought there was some exercises that are called like a Smolov press or something. Maybe I'm mistaken that too. No.
Smolov is basically a very notorious squatting powerlifting program which uses a ridiculous amount of volume at a given percentage of intensity, and it basically it either breaks you or turns you into a squatting beast, basically.
So when you say a brutal amount of volume, like how many reps or sets are we talking?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's just like it's a lot of volume at a certain percentage, but I can't remember exactly what it is though.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I know you squat. Is it 3 times a week? I think I was squatting 3 times a week, maybe more.
It's something like that. Something like that. I don't know. I can't
think
remember.
you possibly actually no, you squat 4 times a week actually, and then yeah, so basically it's just horrendous volume. I think you squat 4 times a week, and it ranges between 70% to like 90% or 80%, and then I think you gradually go up so that actually you end up squatting at what was your 100% multiple times a week.
What?
But yeah, there's the small of, and then the small of junior, which is the bench version. But yeah, I back in the day when I ran it, I put on 20 kilo on my squat in 13 weeks.
Wow.
But then I crippled myself trying to run it again.
Well, I mean that's the thing with such high volume programs, and there was in CrossFit there was a really popular program for a while where you squat every day, but I mean very few people can do that, like weighted squat literally every day. I did do German volume training at some point, and it's actually, I mean, it's also brutal, but it's not as brutal as what you're describing. I mean, the whole premise is that you do 10 sets of a certain exercises for 10 reps, right? So I mean, that is a lot, but you only have 3 training days a week. You have 1 squat day, 1 bench, and 1 deadlift or so. So it's, you know, manageable to recover from, nonetheless brutal. But yeah. Well, thanks everybody. That was a fun discussion. I'll be sending out next week's article in a minute, and I hope everyone has a nice afternoon or evening. Thank you. Bye.